What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 197. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton, and joining me today, coming off the holidays, are my teammates, Mr. Trevor Everett, Coach Scott Pera, Mr. Michael DeRosa. We are coming off of Feast Week. It's a lot of action in a relatively short amount of time, fellas. How are we feeling coming off Thanksgiving? By the way, happy late Thanksgiving for everybody who's tuning in. How are we feeling coming off this loaded slate of games nonstop?
Well, I mean, what a week. It feels like, I missed last Sunday because I was traveling. So I feel like it's been, about 1,000 games have been played and so many things to talk about and so many exciting finishes and tournaments. And, Feast Week is just awesome. And it's the first time I've really got to enjoy it from this side of it in so long. So kind of cool to follow along and see him. And today I'm wearing my Sun Devil t-shirt. People now have been following the show know I usually wear a t-shirt representing somebody or something that's close to me. This they're 7-1. One of my ex-assistants, Greg Howell's on that staff. I've gotten to know Bobby Hurley well over the last couple of years. I obviously coached there for 6 years. And one of my best friends, Doug Tamaro, is a high-level administrator there. So I got a lot of connections to the Devils. What a start for them. We'll get to that and them and all these tournaments here in a little bit. But it's great to be back, everybody, and good to see you guys. Happy holidays.
And winning their football rivalry convingly. Putting
huge.
What do you call the Sun Devil? What do you call that little spearhead thing? You stick it in the ground. What do you call that thing? Anybody know? What do you call that little? Is it a spear? We just call it a spear. Cool. All right. Forget that. Great start for me. All right. So happy Thanksgiving. And we celebrate Christmas in this house a little earlier than we probably should. But Merry Christmas officially to you fellas. Look, it helps that Thanksgiving football this year absolutely stunk. I know the games were good, but the matchups and just the records and the kind of the way the NFL wanted to portray NFL Sunday, I think they thought those games or those matchups would be a lot better than they were. And they just all were terrible and I'm cool with it. So that made Thanksgiving basketball even better. It made all the games before, the games after. It gave you plenty of time to spend time with your family and not worry about football, even though it was on. And I'm just super excited to get into it. It's been a really fun couple of weeks, kind of a nice couple of weeks off too, not being at games, but I'm excited to be back. And I've got a really cool game. I'll give a shout out at the end for where that game is and who I'll be with. But I got a really cool opportunity this coming week.
Feast Week rules. You guys all know the drill. It's amazing. Good to be back, though.
Let me unmute myself there. So I am baby. Full disclosure, I am babysitting right now. His mom's on the way. So if you hear background noise, it's a toddler. What do you want me to do? No, I mean, Feast Week, though, crazy because we're all like, if we work 9 to 5 or regular jobs, you're off for my case, 4 days. And you got basketball from essentially 12 from noon until 1 a.m. a lot of nights. So there's a lot of games to watch, a lot of high-level action we're going to talk about. Trev, you brought it up. I do want to – let's go ahead and ask about this when we're talking about Feast Week. Are there too many games, too many tournaments? Because that's a lot to keep up with. I think the majority of us love keeping up with the big games, the big tournaments. But – if you're somebody who wants to try to keep up with everything, that's a lot to try to follow.
I'll start really quick because I brought this up and I'll step out of the way after I'm done. I only brought this up because if you're like, who is going to Nassau to go watch like Hofstra plays today in the national championship? It's like, if you're not a fan of a Hofstra, this is no offense to any basketball of any level. If it's not Maui, Atlantis, I'll even include Fort Myers, Charleston. Like we don't include Charleston in Feast Week. And I've been to that event. It's an incredible event. Everyone should watch it. Everyone should go to it if they have a chance. Myrtle Beach Invitational. I think some of the flagship ones that are run by the overarching, I think ESPN Invitationals technically runs a ton of them. But like, it just feels like a little too many where we have multiple of them named by the same company under a different tagline. It just seems so convoluted. I love it because it's just more basketball. It's more opportunity for the reason I'm not shooting it down saying it is too many is because it allows for these mid-major teams to go out and play in tournaments and be exposed and have a great time and earn some money. I think that's a really good opportunity. Obviously, you start to kind of convolute things a little when you start adding things like the Players Era, which I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time on today. Whole new tournament, whole new format, whole new opportunity, right? We know how much money was involved in that. But at the end of the day, it's just fun. It's more basketball. I brought it up just as like I'm curious where if anybody had like a strong conviction on it. I just think it's hard to keep up with. We need to maybe trim them a little bit and maybe figure out we don't need to have ones in the same city under the same name at the same time. And just like maybe figure out a better way to organize them. That's all.
Well,
Yeah,
from my side of it,
go ahead,
you know, because I coached at the high major level and the mid major level, you know, I was at the Maui Classic with Arizona State. I was fortunate enough to experience that. And then at Rice, I was at, you know, multiple ones. I was one in Fort Myers. I was one in Vegas twice. And I think they're great. You know, I think they're great. I know there's a lot, but it provides not only opportunity, you know, for so many different teams to go to these cool destination places. You know, it's more than just, you know, basketball all the time in some of the cases, but you also get to have really cool matchups that sometimes you would have trouble scheduling. And so those turn out to be, you know, fun as well. And so, look, I know it gets confusing for sure with, like you said, Trevor, you know, which division's what and how many tournaments under one name and trying to follow it all is difficult on this side. But I think it's great because it's just, you know, the school's usually not in session. The kids can go to a place they wouldn't normally travel. It's a neutral site game. They couldn't get scheduled. So I really enjoy it.
Really quick question.
Yeah.
I figured you probably had been to Maui without really looking into it, but can you give us 30 seconds on what Maui's like? Because it's the flagship product of the week. It is. Yeah.
So interesting fact for me, it was Harden's first game as a freshman. We played Illinois, and I think we were down 18-0 to start the game. That's my first memory of Maui. But then we came back and we ended up winning. We lost that one and then won the last two and got out of there 2-1. We ended up beating LSU, which was interesting. So we won the second game. I believe we beat Princeton. And so then we had to play would that be the fifth place game? But it was played at like 9:30 in the morning. And our flight was at midnight. So I remember the assistant coaches like being like, we got to get this game. Like, if we don't, it's going to be a long day with Coach Sendek and, you know, laminating, going 1 and 2 and being in the film room. And I knew if we won, we'd have like noon to 7 or 8 to, you know, go to the pool and jet ski and the players could go do. And we won in overtime, and Harden was phenomenal to beat LSU. So the experience ended up being terrific. It is a first class. I mean, it's so well run, Trevor, to answer that part of it. And so it is for the families that travel and the fans, the experience is A+.
I only asked because like Norlander did a really good job, and then I'm done, Michael, I promise. Norlander did a really good job of like showcasing how raw and authentic it is. Like going to the locker rooms, there's like a curtain that divides the whole. Like, can you imagine Dan Hurley in the locker room at halftime? They're down whatever it was, and trying to like talk to his guys with the other team being an earshot away. Like, it's just, it seems so authentic. And some of the greatest coaches that have ever coached this game, and players too, have been in that gym, been in that locker room. And like, they're, you know, we've known some of these guys for their career because of those games. It's just crazy to think how
definitely a thrill for me because I'm a big historian of it all.
Yeah,
and who can forget Mike Bray, right?
Yeah.
Taking his shirt off and wearing putting the lay around his neck and flexing and, you know, in that locker room and having fun with it. And that's kind of what it's all about too. So yeah, the place is great. And then you have all the NBA executives, of course. A, there's great talent there, but B, who doesn't want to go to Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
So all the NBA executives are right there along the baseline. When you come out of the locker room, it is authentic. It's just, and the place is, believe me, fellas, it's tiny. I mean, it when you get there, you're like, holy cow, it's smaller than you think. I mean, the TV camera makes it look a little bigger than it actually is.
I was just going to say, to answer Trevor's original question, there are also 363 teams in college basketball that you have to get these games in somehow. So that's really all I was going to add.
I figured you'd throw me a number. That's good. That's great.
Let's stay on Maui since it was the biggest one every year of Feast Week. But I want to ask you this real quick, Coach. How many times did you have guys who are really good shooters see that rim and be like, as soft as it is, be like, oh, I'm about to eat today? Because soft rims, you get the soft rolls. It's much better as a shooter to shoot on a soft rim than one of those rock hard ones. How many times, like a Harden, did he come to you and once he shot or saw the rim was like, oh yeah, I'm about to kill it today?
You know, it's interesting because now that I watch it, I don't remember that. Like it's clear and obvious now, right? But when I was there and whatever year it was, 2007, I don't remember saying, wow, these guys are like, oh my gosh, coach, these things are so soft. We were just like, those are the rims, but you're right, Josh. It has become, obviously very, very clear that those are some shooters' rims.
Oh, very much so. I just see them all the time. I'm like, man, what I wouldn't give to shoot on a rim like that. Let's start. So my two takeaways from Maui. There's two big storylines. I'll let you guys pick which one. We can talk about UConn's disaster of a week and Dan Hurley losing his mind, or we can talk about Auburn clearly separating themselves, what looks like the most complete and best team in the country. Whichever angle you guys want to start with, that's where we'll go. DeRosa, I'll let you pick. Do you want to talk about UConn and Hurley's kind of demise first, or do you want to talk about Auburn being that good?
I imagine you called on me expecting me to say Hurley, but I want to talk about Auburn, actually. I think Auburn's the best team in the country. They were excellent. I mean, they showed how good they were with that win over Houston, despite the odd circumstances of them getting there. And then, they went up big against Iowa State. Iowa State came back, but they ended up winning that game. They beat Memphis, who looked pretty good all week. I think Auburn's the best team in the country. And I think at this point, if the season ended today, which obviously it doesn't, but if it did, I don't know how you pick anyone other than Janai Broome to be the National Player of the Year. He's the best player in the country at this point. He's doing literally everything for that team. He's amazing. And the team itself is great.
Do you know what's crazy? Sorry, Trev. Do you know what's crazy about Janai Broome? I remember him when he was at Morehead State, and he was a double machine. He came into Auburn. We talked about it a couple years ago. Hey, they're getting a double machine. But that's kind of the box he was labeled in. But year over year, you've seen him improve his game to the point this year. What makes him a National Player of the Year frontrunner is, he's a consistent three-point threat now. You have to guard him out there. Yep. And his passing ability. Like, you watch Auburn coach run this kind of modern flex offense where it's the baseline cut, down screen, get it again on the other side. Having a guy like him up there that's a three-point threat at 6'10" and can pass the way he does, that's a damn near impossible, because flex in the traditional sense was brutal to defend anyways, because it's nonstop cutting, baseline cuts, down screens, all that. Now you're modernizing it with a guy that big that can pass and shoot. That's an impossible task for defenses most nights.
And I got to give Coach Pearl credit for that, because there's not a lot of teams that run that offense, and the ones that used to, like Dr. Tom Davis, I believe, was the innovator of it all. And I actually coached with a guy, Division III, in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, named Bob Schlosser, who was a flex. He loved Tom Davis, and we ran the flex. So I got to learn all the nuances of the flex as a 24-year-old Division III assistant. And now to see what they've done with it with their personnel, because I think that's what drives most teams' offense, and it should. Your personnel is really cool, because that kid he's something else, and he can do multiple things. And like you said, Josh, anybody that can pass like that from up top, you cause a lot of problems when you put four good players around them, and that's what they have.
I just know that Alabama fans are kicking and screaming because they are, this perennial top 3 or 4 team coming into the year. They had their best run ever as a program last year. And then Auburn finds a way to leave Maui 3-0, and they're one of the best teams in the country, if not the best team in the country. And I know people are going to argue that. To Connor's point about the SEC biases, that may exist with one of us here, but I think Auburn's the best team in the country as well. I hate to just go 4 for 4 on that. But at the end of the day, the way that they've figured out a way to not be so reliant on guards, even though they really brought in a good trio of guys that I really love. Miles Kelly was an incredible player last year at Georgia Tech. JP Pegues, as you guys know, many times I've talked about with Furman. They've got an incredible group that I think the biggest difference that I've noticed, at least from year to year, and I'll get to, I have a little bit of a shout out at the end for Cardwell, but they're playing more cohesively. They're trusting each other more. The guys that have stuck around year to year under Pearl, the cohesion there is going to be what's really sticking out so far. And obviously I think that's what helps get it done in a tournament like Maui, where everything's so tight and everything's on top of each other. And it's obviously, like we said, shooters friendly rim. You got to be able to play together. And I think that's something this team's doing a lot better. And I think Bruce Pearl continues to show that he's one of the best coaches in the country, despite some of the, we can nitpick the shortcomings, losing to a Yale or whatever, right, in the last few years. But he's one of the best coaches in the country. And this team being this cohesive is something that I think is going to really be good for them, as we're really not that far away from conference play, all things considered.
Look, Auburn's allowed to lose to Yale every so often, because people who have an older stature will know, Coach, you know this, Auburn was garbage for such a long time. Now, every once in a while, they'd have like a Barkley come along and they'd have a good little run, but they were never consistently good. The fact that we're talking about Auburn as the best team in the country and that we were disappointed that they got beat by Yale. And, oh, by the way, they've made a Final Four and could have won a title if a call went their way against Virginia. It's still doesn't like compute that Auburn is a national power now under Bruce Pearl. So, and I'm going to get to something here. Our guy, Connor McCabe, love him to death. He thinks we have an SEC bias. We're just being honest. Wait until
He thinks
Coach
you do.
Oh, Connor.
He thinks you
hold,
do.
hold on.
He's right on that one.
Connor.
Well, I'm
I
right this year.
but I did not say Auburn was the best team in the country. You three did.
That's 3-1
Well,
still.
But here's the thing, though, and Coach will drop a stat for you that'll kind of back all this up through the first month of the year of why the SEC is so good. But we don't have a bias. We've spent the last couple of years talking about the Big 12 being the best conference in college basketball by far. We've given love to the ACC when they make runs in the tournament after maybe not being great in the regular season. So miss me with that SEC bias. And then Peyton, one of his teams is Kansas. He says Auburn's resume is slightly better than Kansas, talking about beating Houston on the road in a true road environment, then winning Maui against 3 really good teams. I mean, they look the most complete. And something that we didn't talk about, DeRosa, we in all of our group chat, you and I kind of discussed it for a minute the other night. The fact that they can play Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell big minutes together. If you'd have told me that coming into the year, I wouldn't have believed you, because last year they subbed for each other. They didn't spend a lot of time on the floor together. If Broome started and he gets a foul trouble or needs a breather, Cardwell comes in as kind of a change of pace big, more physical and all that. The fact that they're playing basically the 4-5 together and it's working so well, man, Auburn's a wagon right now. They are so hard to handle.
I'll
and then
share
Chad
this
Baker
now.
Mazara making shots.
I'll share this now because I was going to save it for the shout out because I thought it was such an incredible, and I'll link it in the episode and all that stuff. I'll post it off the ECB post later, tweet later. But Cardwell, after the game, after the championship, made a comment about basically, I mentioned the team being cohesive, and this is part of where I noticed this is, like you said, they used to be interchangeable for each other. And last year, I don't remember the exact game he recalled to now. I'd have to look it up, but I'll link his comments. But he basically said that he just flipped a switch and he prayed and he was like, I got to understand and trust, because he was really resentful of Janai Broome. I think that was a really big problem for how they were interchangeable for each other. And he referenced one of his best games last year was when Janai Broome had to sit because of injury or something like that. And he credited just being able, it was a switch that got flipped where he trusted Broome and he trusted what Coach Pearl has been preaching to these guys for probably now, 2-3 years. And just, I think that cohesion, like I mentioned earlier, repeating my point a little bit, he spoke to just how important that was for them and how impactful. And obviously that doesn't necessarily fix the basketball part of it. But I think if you buy into the belief that you can play together and you trust your coach, who's one of the best coaches in the country, they're going to be able to figure it out.
It's one of the biggest challenges of coaching. And to me, it is what coaching really is, Trevor.
Yep.
I mean, because so many people have talented players. And if you're going to recruit people that you see a vision for that you think can work, but if they're not going to buy into it, it doesn't matter. You know, and so how do you make that work to convince them that what your vision is going to help everybody, not just them? And that is what's such the challenge of it. It's what is so much fun about it, but it's also, you know, when coaches at that level get teams to do that, that's when special things can happen. And so it's a credit to the kids for trusting, like you said, and also a credit to that staff for getting them for building that trust and getting that culture built.
DeRosa, we've spent a lot of time, rightfully so, talking about Auburn's dominant front court, but man, the back court is really good. And it's something something else I find very interesting is Denver Jones is an out and out too. He's a spot up shooter, but he's been playing a lot of kind of initiator of the offense to get him in, almost like that makeshift 1 point guard spot for him. And the fact that he's doing that, and then you throw in, we mentioned Chad Baker Mazara just making everything right now and getting to the rim. And Auburn's backcourt is tough. They're hard nosed and they make shots. Kind of your thoughts on Auburn's backcourt, because again, Denver Jones is playing a lot of times kind of the initiator of their offense when he's an out and out too, a spot up shooter.
Yeah, and just looking at the stats now, Denver Jones and Janai Broom are tied for the team lead in assists. They both have 23 on the season, 3.3 per game. But yeah, Denver Jones is running a lot of one, but like in Bruce Pearl's offenses, they don't like Wendell Green, if we're just looking back to like Auburn teams of recent memory. Katie Johnson kind of ran some one. They're looking for like gunners at the one. They don't really have like a true normal, I shouldn't say normal, but like a true point guard.
Then for what it's worth.
Yeah, Big East. He's a gunner too. They just kind of have gunners, and it works for them. Like that's just kind of their system. It's kind of how they make it work, and that's just how it's been. And Jones has been great. Todd Pettiford looks awesome. Trev mentioned Pegues. JP Pegues is a very good basketball player. He proved that at Furman. He's proven that this year. That they just have dudes, man. They just make it
Miles
work.
Miles Kelly knocking shots down. I mean, Auburn, listen, Kansas is right there, and we'll talk some Kansas. They had a good win against Duke. There's no reason for them to fall. I think this is more of a case Auburn has kind of reached out and taken it from them. But Kansas is right there. Let's talk about the other storyline from Alot. And I guess this is kind of a twofold, and Coach, I'll come to you on this first. UConn comes in. I don't think anybody expects them to lose to Memphis, especially kind of in the way that they did. All right, you give them that. They lose to Memphis. Then they turn around, lose to Colorado, and then get hammered by Dayton. They finished dead last in Maui. It's a shame. It's a shame they stopped playing Chaminade because they may have lost the Chaminade at this rate. I mean, out there in Maui. But an awful week, and their flaws came out against 3 tough opponents. They can't defend. And then Hurley, the other part of that equation. I get that's his kind of calling card. I get he's passionate. I get that he loses his mind and some even say intimidates the referees. That Bobby Knight mold, great. But man, it's clear that at least out in Maui, and I think you'll see it in Big East play a lot, these officials are just, they've had it. They're not going to put up with all the constant screaming and getting red in the face and all that. So I guess the 2-part question on that, Coach. What do you think about UConn having an absolute off of Maui, and then the Coach Hurley thing?
Well, let me start with the 0-3. I look, I was more surprised at the Colorado loss than I was the Memphis loss. I thought they'd bounce back and beat, I don't think, Colorado, by the way, Tad Boyle, I think, is one of the most underrated coaches in the entire country. Guy is phenomenal. But I thought UConn's talent, and after the loss, they have the chip and they would win that game. So that was more of a surprise to me than the original one because Memphis played tremendous and they have a ton of talent. But again, do they lose the game if Coach Hurley doesn't get that tee at that time? So that they're kind of intertwined, right? Those questions and the results. And, it's hard for me, to be in this spot now, especially since, he and I are friends and I've known him a long time. Because it's one of those things, I think he wishes it didn't occur to that extent, probably in reflection. He also probably wishes, that those refs like that to me it was a horrible call. But again, there's going to be bad calls in games. The kid made an unbelievable play on that rebound. Basketball play where I don't know anybody thought it was a foul. Maybe one of you guys did. I don't know. No. But phenomenal play. But he's got to understand, especially in that case, if it's not, in the first half, maybe it's one thing. At that time of the game is another. And so shocked they're 0-3, no question. But, I'm not one to hit the panic button. He's going to see their flaws. They're going to get better. And hopefully we don't, hopefully he too understands that if the refs are going to draw the line on this stuff, then that he's got to stay behind the line, period. Otherwise he's going to get thrown out of games, and that's not what he wants to do at the end of the day.
Well, thankfully for Coach Hurley and UConn, they have a really easy game coming up. They have Baylor comes to town. That's a cakewalk for them. No, seriously.
Then go to Texas.
Yeah, easy game. So
it's not even that.
I think I'm going to be there. I think I'm going to be there next Sunday.
The only non-top 100 team to play as of currently KenPom rating that they play the rest of the year is Seton Hall. Wow, that's it. The rest of the year.
Top 100.
Every single team except for Seton Hall. Yeah.
Wow.
DePaul's 99. Shout out to DePaul.
99.
Providence should not be a top 100 team, but that's a conversation for another day.
Their only wins, by the way, are 361, 352, 328, 357, and 320.
Wow.
Yeah, they haven't tested themselves against anybody aside from Maui.
Their defense, DeRosa, is on KenPom and adjusted efficiency is 82nd. Now, offense 5th. Offense clicking, fine, right? Defense, and you look at the 3-point percentage against these teams. And again, some of it may be Maui with the soft rims. I get that, right? Tyrese Hunter hit, 7 or 8 in game 1 against them. But they're giving up teams are shooting 36% from behind the arc on them. And it's clear that they've got to figure out. And I just think a lot of it's toughness. Like Aiden Mahaney's not really turned it on yet. And it's only a month in. We know he's a really good player. We've seen it at St. Mary's. The adjustment period to Connecticut and a high major is probably taking longer than maybe a lot of people thought. Liam McNeely, really talented, great offensive talent, but trying to figure out how to defend at a high level. And I honestly, if we're being honest, they don't have Donovan Clingan back there blocking shots and protecting the rim. So their defense obviously has to get better. And we just talked about that schedule. Their next 4 alone, Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga, Xavier. And then on the road to Butler, if you want to add the 5th one. I mean, there's a chance UConn 500, maybe under 500, depends on how this goes if they don't figure the defense out. So I think it's a little surprising that they went 0-3 in this tournament. I don't know, man. I just wish Hurley, I love the passion. That's kind of the old school way. I grew up with coaches doing that. I did it early in my coaching career. But you got to know now. Don't lose your mind on a loose ball foul in the first half. Save it for when the game actually matters and it means more. I want him to pull it back just a little bit. And remember 2 years ago when they won that first title of the back-to-back, he said he credited it to kind of lighten it up and just being more zen and relaxed. What the hell happened there? What the hell happened there?
He needs to go back to his I don't know, the Zen master and regroup. But hey,
he needs to get Phil Jackson on the horn.
I want to talk about Memphis a little bit too, Josh.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Because
I text you guys this. I have unbelievable familiarity with those 3 guards. Yeah. We played Texas 2 years in a row. Obviously, we played Wichita State with Colby Rogers. He eliminated us from the AAC tournament last year with a clutch 30-foot 3 late in the game when they needed it. And obviously the kid from Tulsa, Haggerty, he is one of the most unique players in the country. People talk about how Harden has that unbelievable knack to draw fouls, right? Well, Haggerty's knack to draw fouls is unparalleled. He is so hard to guard. And even though you know what he's doing, you have great defenders on him, and he still gets to the line 6, 8, 10 times a game. And that's an incredible skill. And he's just such a good player. All 3 of those dudes, I mean, they can beat you individually on a night. And the 3 of them are clicking. They can beat anybody, as they proved by obviously beating UConn, who now maybe we don't think as good as they were, but they're still good. I mean, come on.
Well,
and so impressive.
I want to give a UConn take first because I have a bad Memphis take that I'm going to deliver. That's going to get me yelled at. So I want to talk about UConn first to
go ahead.
Get the ice going. Yeah. With UConn, Mahaney, I like the kid. I really liked him at St. Mary's, but he just hasn't adjusted at all. He's very clearly not a 1. They don't have that true 1 that they had with Tristan Newton. They really didn't even have Tristan Newton when they went on the first year, when they went on that 6-game losing skid. It's because Tristan Newton wasn't playing well at all. Then he comes back and was playing at a really high level. Then they ended up winning 2 natties. Hassan Diarra wasn't playing at a particularly high level, but Mahaney, I really like Aiden Mahaney, but he just has not clicked yet. I really hope he does because I loved him at St. Mary's, but he hasn't clicked yet. And with Hurley, I thought the one time he got called for the tech was the one time he was incessant about a call and was actually correct in the Memphis game.
Thank you.
It was the one time he was correct.
Thank you.
It was, but I think I think the things that led up before that kind of, I think that's more what I'm talking about. It's let some of the other stuff go. Maybe get in the official's ear, but not be craze maniac.
Colorado loss is terrible. Colorado sucks.
That's awful.
One thing that Coach said earlier that I think is really that I will just kind of leave, and we obviously as we do these for the rest couple of months, we'll kind of see how this ages. But the one thing that I think that's so concerning for me, where I'm not hitting the panic button either because it's December, but I've always said you can't out coach experience, or you can't, your coaching can't overrule some experience sometimes. And I think that's my biggest problem with him so far. Is just I think this is a team that if he keeps these guys. I know some of them, Diarra, Johnson, some others are seniors, but this is relatively an inexperienced team, right? Freshmen, sophomores, juniors. I think this is one of those situations where if he keeps these guys another year, it's like they could win a national championship. That's the thing, is that I just don't know if there's enough experience that where he's going to have to. It's going to be his most masterful coaching job if they make an Elite Eight, make a Final Four, et cetera. I think the inexperience is too much.
Well, they do have help on the way. Braylon Mullins and that recruiting class coming in will add more talent. I'm sure they'll hit the portal. So UConn's here to stay this year. Probably that downhill from coming off back-to-back, which is expected, right? It's expected. It'll be interesting to see how they play out, though, this year. Putting a bow on Maui, we talked about Memphis. DeRosa, I do want to hear your hot Memphis take, but Memphis, to me, raised their stock. There's a couple teams throughout the country this week, to me, really raised their stock. Memphis is a top 20 ball club, in my opinion. Coach mentioned it with the 3 guards, the way their toughness, and you got to give a lot of credit to Penny Hardaway. All the drama surrounding his program, firing all of his staff, bringing in Mike Davis, bringing in Nolan Smith. And all they're doing is just playing hard-nosed defense. They're making shots. They're shooting the 3 ball incredibly well through the first month of the year. This is a team that looks like the real deal that could make a little bit of a run in March, maybe even a big run depending on matchups fall. So I thought Memphis really raised their stock this week. And the other 2 I want to touch on just briefly, Michigan State, Tom Izzo. I don't think they've looked particularly great, but they did play Kansas close in an ugly one. Brutal game out in the Champions Classic. They beat North Carolina. So he has a team I think he's working with that will get better and be a challenger in the Big Ten throughout the year. And then North Carolina is the other team. I don't know what to make of Carolina. I really don't. Let me pull their schedule. Have they won any of their big games? No. They played 3 what you'd call big-time opponents so far, kind of quad 1 wins. They lose to Kansas in a great game on the road. You forgive that. They lose to Auburn, right? The 2 number 1 teams we're talking about. And then Michigan State, you lose in overtime, which is a team that's not in our top 25 yet that I think will be. So on the surface, not bad losses, but you got to start winning some of these kind of major games coming your way. I don't know what to think about Carolina. I don't really like their consistency, especially defensively. But those 3 teams kind of 2 on the rise with Memphis and Michigan State, and then North Carolina, I'm still trying to figure out. DeRosa, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, with Memphis first, I think obviously we have to rank Memphis this week just based on what they've shown us.
Some of us already done that.
Yeah. Right now, I think they're a top 20, 25 type team.
Yeah.
What Memphis does this every year, right? They start the year amazing. They're the same team, and then slowly it just kind of comes downhill. Like eventually I think that's just going to happen again. Until it doesn't happen, I'm going to expect that to happen. That sure, they'll do that. But I feel like every Penny Hardaway team, every year we talk about how they're top 20 around this time, and then they slowly go downhill. They'll get like an 8-9 seed. They probably, in the year that FAU ended up making the Final Four, Memphis probably should have won that first round game if the refs didn't. There was one greasy call at the end. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember it was greasy.
It was greasy, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then I feel like there's another year they were an 8-9 seed. They won a game in the tournament, then lost one. And
his only win in the last 4 years, I believe. Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why we expect this Memphis team to be different. They're talented, but they've been talented every year. David Jones was an excellent college player. He was there last year, and that team didn't really do anything. That PJ Haggerty was Kyle Macy, national freshman of the year, I believe. It's he's a dog. Tyrese Hunter, we've seen him at every stop. He's amazing, but it's the same story every year. Until that story doesn't play out, that's the story I'm going to expect. And frankly, I wouldn't be stunned I would be kind of surprised if they didn't make the tournament, but I wouldn't be stunned if they're a 10 seed.
I'll give you my reasoning real quick.
Sure.
Defensively, they've always been tough under Penny. I think offensively is where they've changed. They've got 3 guards. You're basically playing 3-point guards that can go get their own, create. That all 3 of them could have games where they go for 20-plus apiece and carry the offense. I think offensively, they're a much better spot now than they have been in the past. And that's where I buy Memphis. Go ahead, Trev.
I was actually going to say the opposite. I think this team's defensive. Last year, they were 104th in KenPom. They're top 60 now. So, yes, they're going to find a way. Like last year, they lost to a bunch of teams in the American that they definitely shouldn't have lost to. And
what are you saying, Trevor? That wasn't very nice.
Well, okay. As soon as what's funny? What's crazy? As soon as I said it, I knew as soon as I said it.
Okay.
They were big favorites. and I see
Big
Rice,
favorite.
and I see 74-71, and I knew as soon as I said it that was coming. I looked over to the right. I didn't even think of the teams yet. I just knew that and I looked, South Florida, Tulane, UAB, Rice in a 4-game stretch they all lost to. They'll find a way to lose to Temple this year. Like, it's just like whatever, right?
Hey, at Memphis too. Let's make sure we got that.
It's a good win. I remember
That's
it's
a
a good
great
win.
win.
It's
That's
just
a
funny because
great
like
win.
I knew as soon as I said it, the crow was coming. So anyway, no, look, this Memphis team feels different because I think that they're playing harder defensively. I think that's something. I think the buy-in defensively. You don't win that UConn game. I know it's in the 90s. You don't win that UConn game if you're not locked in defensively that late into the game. You just don't. I'm with DeRosa. I think it's a great point on Memphis. I think that the idea of what Memphis is hasn't changed under Hardaway, and I don't know if that's just a Penny maybe isn't, we all think he's a pretty good coach. Maybe there's some stuff there that they just have figured out. Maybe it's Nolan Smith. Maybe it's whatever. You guys know how I feel about him. I think he's an incredible coach, and maybe he's a program changer, but I think the defense has been good. Like, I think that's actually been the calling card early this year. I know their offense is incredible, but the effort seems more consistent. And I think that's something that will help them as the American. Maybe a down year. There's some good teams, but I think if they can just, I know you mentioned wouldn't be a surprise with the 10 seed. They've played their hardest games. Their last like real difficult. I know they played Mississippi State and Ole Miss back to back at home. By the way, shout out to them for that. They play Clemson at Clemson in a couple of weeks. Like, they've got some hard games coming up, but like if they can win 2 out of those 3 I just named, and then Virginia's somewhere in the middle there, they'll have all the momentum in the world to go into conference play and just absolutely rattle it off.
I'm just a huge fan of PJ Haggerty.
He's good.
Like,
he's really good.
Compared to like last year's team, even like this kid he's really, really smart, tough, talented. I think he can control a lot of things that go on, and I think he makes them a little different than they've been. But we'll see. We'll see. They got to, they got to prove it. You guys are going on what has occurred, and I can't argue that. Yeah. And but I would say this. I'd say this team's a little different.
One thing,
I want on the record that I believe that this take could be like, I could look like an absolute idiot in 4 months, and like I see exactly how that happens. Like 100%, that is very possible.
So they got to prove.
But at the same time, it's just one thing I haven't seen it. And another, how does Memphis's stock rise from this point forward? How do we look at Memphis? And I mean,
just
sure, but I feel like the only way it goes is down at this point. And maybe it only goes down to like instead of them being top 20, they're top 22. Like, that's nothing. But like, I don't see how it gets higher.
Winning cures all. If they keep winning,
that's right.
you have no choice to look at them and be like, well, I mean, you can't fault them, because what's any different than what we looked at FAU in years past, or these other teams that get red hot, and you're like, well, maybe they're not in the greatest conference, or in a good conference, not great, but they're winning. So how do we judge them? I mean, we bought into all these other teams. I think all you can do right now on December 1st is look at Memphis, what they just did in Maui, and be like, all right, that's a pretty good team. That's a pretty damn good team.
Yeah.
The answer's in front of them, like I said earlier. It's win 3 out of 4 against Clemson, Virginia, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. That's a stretch that they play in a row, away, home.
Wow.
And then really quick on North Carolina, I don't have time for the full take. Maybe I'll save it for Thursday, or I'll do it on my pod or whatever. But there's enough issues that right now is coaching malpractice, because they have not figured out a starting lineup that's working. I think there's a lot of different issues with like the front court that they've got to address anyway. They just don't have a 5. I can't wait to see them. I'll get a chance to see them against LaSalle here on the 14th at the Dean Smith Center, and then later on in the month as well. I know not high major opponents, but I want to see this team in person and see what some people are saying. But they've got a problem in the front court, and I don't know if it's fixable. So that's just kind of like, I abbreviated 15 minutes of a take into 2 minutes. But
let's move on to what I would say is probably the second biggest tournament each year across Feast Week, and that would be the Battle for Atlantis. We came into this expecting Gonzaga to romp through, dominate. Probably expected, and a lot of us thought it would be a Gonzaga-Arizona final, and neither one of them looked great in this week. I don't think so. Neither one looked great. How about if I would have told you at the start of this that the championship match would be Louisville versus Oklahoma, a team who I had finished in 15th in the SEC, and Oklahoma goes on and wins the Battle for Atlantis and does it fairly convincingly. Like, they looked really good out in Atlantis this week. I think the storylines from this, and you guys touch on whatever you want to. Louisville, on the positive, Louisville, Oklahoma looked amazing. They looked really good. Both of them looked, in my opinion, if not top 25, top 30, very close in. And then the two negatives, well, three negatives. Gonzaga didn't look great. I know they ended up finishing third place, fourth place, whatever. Arizona did not look great, and Indiana looked abysmal. And honestly, you could throw West Virginia in looking positive, had a really good week as well. So kind of a mixture of three teams not looking great, three teams surprising us. So where do you guys want to start on this?
Go ahead, Michael.
Me again. I want to start with Oklahoma. Oklahoma was a team I didn't expect to be very good this year. Like, quite frankly, just to be blunt about it, they look good. They looked like solid. Like, all things considered, you're taking a reclass freshman, like 2 months before the season, and he's your starting point guard. It's like that to me, red flags. You look at up and down the roster, it's like you lose Otega Owa, you lose John Hughley, you lose all these guys who were really key pieces. Milos Uzan. They're good. Like, they just look good this week. Porter Moser is a really good coach. I don't think he gets enough credit for it because I think the Oklahoma fit with him was always like kind of weird. Really good coach. And to win those games the way they did, I mean, the first game against Providence was – did you guys see the ending of that game?
I did not.
It was insane.
So what happened was Oklahoma wanted to make a sub after they made a free throw to go up 4. And the ref didn't like check him in. So the guy just ran onto the court. So they had 6 on 5 at one point for like 5 seconds, like not even a second. Like the Oklahoma player intentionally fouled immediately. It was like, oh crap, we got to get this guy off the court. The refs, they go to the monitor for like 7 minutes and they're like, yeah, this is a technical foul. So you're shooting 2 free throws and then they get the ball back and Providence had a chance to win it after that.
What? And a good chance to win it too. That ball was going to the goal.
It was a good look from Pierre.
It was an insane look.
It would have completely changed the way we talked about this entire tournament. But yeah, the guy ran on the fort to have a 6 on 5. It was ridiculous.
What? That's crazy.
It was insane. Go back and watch. It was absolutely stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I don't know how. Like, it was just crazy.
It wasn't even the craziest result of the week. We can talk about Butler later, I'm sure.
Yeah. Coach, let me throw some Oklahoma things at you here. We know DeRosa talked about Porter Moser. You go back to his Loyola teams. They controlled tempo, played everything in the half court. They were tough defensively, and they made shots. If you look at Oklahoma right now, sitting at 7-0, winners of the battle for Atlantis. 44th defense, so a top 50 D, all things considered, where they were started projected. That's pretty damn good. Adjusted tempo, they're 222 and adjusted tempo, meaning they're playing the half court. They're shooting 37.5% from 3, and they're also limiting teams to 26.5% for 19th best in the country from 3. So all the hallmarks of what Porter Moser does really well are there. And how about this? There is a chance now that we've seen what Oklahoma could be with Jeremiah Fears and Jalen Moore, Kobe Elvis, and all these guys, there's a chance they head in the SEC play 13-0. For a team that I projected 15th in the magazine, the SEC, to start 13-0, that seems unreal almost, but their schedule kind of lines up for it. The only one I think that would have a challenge with is they play Michigan on a neutral floor. I think everybody else, they should be able to beat Georgia Tech, Alcorn State, Bedlam on the hardwood with Oklahoma State, Michigan, Central Arkansas, Prairie View A&M before they get to Alabama. I think there's a chance Oklahoma could be 13-0 heading into SEC play where they play Alabama January 4th. That's nuts for a team.
That Michigan game, Michigan just beat the brakes off of Xavier.
That'd be a great
that's
game.
An interesting team that they.
Danny Wolf looked spectacular. He was
so good.
really, really good.
I recruited Danny Wolf really hard. I did.
I credited Yale 20 minutes ago, and here we are again.
A few years ago now. Really, really liked him, especially because we had Max. We would use him the way we, we would have loved him. And obviously, he was way better. It turned out to be above us for good reason. But back to your Porter Moser, Josh. Look, it's so hard in the preseason when you're trying to analyze and predict how teams are going to do in your world, right? In what you guys do, because there's so many things you don't know unless you're at practice or around the team, maybe for a week at a time, which is impossible, obviously, with 360 teams. And so, what I'd love to do is, kind of ask Porter how he felt about this team in September, how he felt about him in July. Like, did he think that they had this chance to be this good this early? Because he may say yes, that he felt really good about him. He didn't know they'd win all these games, but he thought that he'd have a way better team than people thought, which, by the way, goes back to my coach Rhodes in Penn State, similar situation. Here's a team that was picked 17th or whatever in the Big Ten. I just don't see that happening. But again, Mike liked his team in July. Porter Moser is a very good coach.
Yeah.
That he has proven that. Mike Rhodes is a very good coach. He's proven that. So here you go with these guys kind of have teams they like. Maybe they have great chemistry as well. Maybe they're all committed and they're overachieving. And if they go into the league, play 12-1, 11-2, or 13-0, holy smokes, right?
Yeah.
What a great start. And like you said, Josh, you hit all those those numbers that equal winning for Porter Moser. And that's why they're doing so well.
Control the game. That's his whole motto. Control the game, make big shots, especially from the three-point line. Like, that's how he took Loyola to a Final Four. I mean, they dominated the half court. He had very good guards. Look at all the buzzer beaters they beat. They beat Miami. They beat Tennessee in that run. They beat Nevada and was a Sweet 16 Elite 8 with a huge corner three to give them a 5-point lead there late. So for his teams to be really good, they slow the game down, make you kind of wear down with their defensive pressure and put pressure on you in the offense, controlling the pace, and then hitting big shots. And so far, Oklahoma is every one to a T of the Porter Moser playbook. That's what they're doing, and they're a big surprise right now. Trev, Peyton's in the chat here, so let's talk about his Louisville Cardinals. I came away very impressed with Louisville. When Peyton and I went to that game a couple weeks ago against Tennessee, and Tennessee kind of ran over them, but Louisville had very good looks. If they make half the threes that they attempted, that is a much closer game, and people look at that game differently. Also, Tennessee's, as we've seen, very experienced, top 5, top 6 kind of ball club right now through the first month. So I wasn't selling Louisville like some other people were. I still thought they were very good. And, man, they had a really good battle for Atlantis. Molly-walked Indiana, just ran over Indiana, beat a surprisingly good West Virginia team in overtime, showed their grit and toughness. And if Cason Pryor doesn't go down against Oklahoma, they may win this, and we're talking about them in the same vein that we just talked about Oklahoma. So, for one, I hope Pryor's okay because they definitely need him as a size and all the things he can do. But, man, defensively, they've got a good identity, the way they get after you. They are top with they're 21st defensively right now and adjust the defense on KenPom. So they get after you defensively, put a lot of pressure. They play a lot of guys. They're going to shoot the hell out of three. They're not shooting it percentage-wise great, but they've got dudes who can shoot. You look at their three-point attempts to field goal attempts, they're 12th in the nation right now. 51.4% of their shots come from the three-point line. If they can start hitting a higher percentage of those, Louisville is dangerous, very dangerous. I came away impressed from Louisville, and even with the loss to Oklahoma, fellas, I think I'm going to vote them tonight in the top 25. I don't think you can look at the country right now and be like, yeah, there's 25 or 26 teams better. I really like this Louisville team, and I think they've got a chance to have a really fun year this year.
I'll be short and sweet because this is be a self pat on the back moment here. But I mean, I had them as a top 6 team in the ACC coming in up from the magazine. This is literally, I mean, I saw Coach Kelsey coach in the last 2 years more than probably any coach that in my region here previously. And so, look, this is a guy that I've always believed in. A guy that he has his shortcomings. That little blow by was a little tough there. Probably shouldn't have done that, but at the end of the day, frustrated call. The call was definitely wrong, and the way he approached it in the press conference is something that I'm sure Dan Hurley probably could learn from. The other thing is with Louisville is they're built perfectly. They're built exactly like Kelsey likes to win and likes to play. And also preparation from game to game. Like they're going to learn from themselves, Oklahoma. They learned from Tennessee and they went through Bellarmine, Winthrop, Indiana, West Virginia. They just ripped through those teams because they're really, really prepared from game to game. And I think that's one of the best things about Kelsey. So I think that again, I don't know about top 25. I was working on mine before we started and I'm in the 15, 16 so far. So I think they're probably going to be closer to 25 than they would be to 15, obviously, because there's plenty of great teams this year. But I'm excited to see how they handle. I keep bringing up the schedule of the next couple of games for all these teams, it feels like. But they play Ole Miss, the ACC SEC Challenge we'll get to in a little bit. They play Duke, UTEP, and Kentucky as their next 4 at Kentucky. So really, really interesting couple of games here for them. The one thing I want to bring up for Atlantis, because I know we got to get to a bunch of stuff, is Arizona has an identity crisis. That is my big takeaway from this tournament and from just really this week is that Arizona is a team that I've always just kind of had hesitations and doubts about in the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. Obviously, we've seen teams like Princeton be able to have a style that can execute against them. But at the end of the day, they have Caleb Love. They have an incredible backcourt that's deep. That's, albeit somewhat inexperienced. They've obviously got some younger guys there. And then they want to play through the bigs. Every broadcast, the broadcast is telling you how the bigs they want to get the ball inside, and they want to do this, they want to do that. I don't think they know how they want to play yet. And like to Coach's point earlier about asking like Porter Moser in July about his team or whatever, I'd like to ask Tommy Lloyd with Truth Serum how he thinks about his team, a week before the season, because obviously, the Caleb Love storyline has been brought up plenty of times because of just what he can be. And if he is incredible, then they're going to obviously be a completely different team. But they're better when he's not on the floor. That's just been a fact so far this season. And at the end of the day, if they can figure out a way to consistently be more cohesive and understand how to play within themselves, I think this team changes. Even like guys like Anthony D'Orso, brought him up a million times, got to see him a bunch, right? He just had his first real good game in a blowout against Davidson, right? Like that's somebody that you can't have be scoring 20 anymore. But that's also somebody that, albeit the defensive questions and problems, they don't have anybody off the bench that they can just point to and say, we're in a tough spot right now against, say, at Oklahoma, 82-77, and they can't point to that guy right now. Normally it'd be Caleb Love because he's obviously incredible. They don't have a guy they can point to right now that can win them a game, and that's really, really frustrating, I'm sure, for Lloyd.
Another thing Arizona did really well over the years. Another thing they did really well over the years that I don't think they can do is they had these dominant bigs, but they'd post them up really early. So you'd get a mismatch and you get them really good position. You get them the ball, turn, score like 7 seconds into a shot clock. Like it was kind of unlike really anything anyone was doing. I know Sean Miller talked about he wanted to adopt that with Xavier, with Fremantle when those guys were healthy that year. Nunji too. You can't really do that with Tobe Awaka. I love Tobe Awaka. Josh, we talked about it last year. I am a Tobe Awaka guy through and through. That's not his game. That's just not his game.
Post-up guy.
No.
He's better as a trash guy, where he's crashing offensive glass, getting putbacks, beating off the bounce. If he has a defender, he can take to the rim and whip him. He's not a back to the basket, throw it in and feed it to him. That's just not. He's not really a spot up shooter either. He's just a guy that's going to get his 12, 14 points off of rebounds, fast break dunks, stuff like that. Yeah, he's not a back to the basket. And I also think Arizona, coach, I think they have a toughness problem. You look the Duke game, Duke just tuck it to them. Like when they put their foot on the pedal, they attacked and were getting loose balls, getting offensive rebounds, and Arizona did not put any resistance up. West Virginia drug them into overtime and just out-physicaled them with their guards, their front court. I think Arizona in these big games have a toughness issue. The only guy who I look at that I think that could match up, that shows it at least in his body language and play on the floor, is KJ Lewis. He's in the middle of everything for them as far as getting all the dirty plays for him. Nobody else is doing that. And I think Arizona, to what Trevor said, I think it's a toughness issue for Arizona right now.
Well, look, it's just very interesting, this early season stuff, right? These teams that, we just think, UConn and Arizona, and I mean, just, we didn't talk about Houston yet, right? Just some teams that North Carolina, teams that you just think are going to be, top 10, no brainer type of teams. And, now they're starting to see, some of their flaws, some of the holes. We'll see who does the kind of the best coaching job here moving forward to make the adjustments, to make the changes, and hopefully some players that were counted on, to be the guys or the main guys start playing more consistently for these teams, or they're going to have, not the season they expect, like, especially like a team like Arizona, right? They're in the Big 12 now, right? I mean, holy smokes. I mean, that league is just, like the SEC, right? Just a brutal gauntlet. And so we'll see how quickly Tommy makes the adjustments and if they do. And so that's what makes this all so much fun, right? I mean, everybody's not going to be 8-0. Things are going to happen. And we've given all these teams credit for these schedules, right? Well, you play Duke, you could lose. I mean, and they could expose you in some ways. Same way if you're like the way Duke is scheduled. And so this has just been fun to me. And we'll kind of see how it plays out. And we'll be talking about this in a month, who did these things that needed to be done, who stepped up, who made the adjustments, whose minutes went down, all those things that kind of go into, the evolution of a season. And Arizona's going to be a fun one to watch.
Wrapping up Battle for Atlantis. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we do have to move on, but Indiana, West Virginia. West Virginia surprised the hell out of me. I mean, they got blown out by Pitt a few weeks ago, and then they came in played 3 straight overtime games. So by the time they got to that final game that they were worn out. But man, Tucker DeVries, we know how good he was coming over from Drake. Phenomenal. But Javon Small, what a player he has been for them so far. He is their guy, go-to guy to get a bucket, to create everything. I think West Virginia, they're another one a la Oklahoma. Maybe you did not think they were an NCAA tournament team, but now you look at their pieces after this week and you're like, yeah, maybe they can compete in the Big 12. And Indiana, man, Jesus, for our Indiana people who are watching this, I'm sorry, because we knew the offense was outdated. We knew they struggled to shoot the ball. We knew all that. But in that Louisville game in particular, they gave up. And really in Gonzaga too, they gave up. There was no fight from Indiana. They did bounce back, get a win there the other day to finish 7th place or whatever. But Indiana's just got, you talk about identity crisis. They don't know what their offense is. They don't know what the rotations are. Are they better with Ballo on the floor? Are they better with him off the floor? They still can't shoot great. And when the going gets tough, from what we've seen through 2 games so far, they just kind of quit. So I'm really concerned about Indiana, and we shouldn't be, because they have a load of talent we've talked about in the preseason. This team is talented. Talking about coaching malpractice, I'm sorry, IU fans. That's all I can say. I think it's maybe –
I was just saying, got to keep Galloway off the blackjack table. I mean,
that's not a good look.
Tough looks.
Not a good look. Not a good look. DeRosa, coach, you guys have anything on West Virginia, Indiana?
What time was that? And was that actual? That actually happened?
I've seen enough of it that I believe it, and it was at 5 in the morning of a game day.
Yeah.
Wow. So man, kids took a picture with him. Like, I mean, that's not something, I don't know. Anyway, I won't get into that right now.
I mean, you got Indiana fans, and I understand why. They're like, why are we paying all this money? Because you heard about the salary, the NIL that they gave to get Omar Ballo. And, well, I mean, might as well call this salary.
That's right. Call a spade a spade. I'm with you. Oh, that's a good one. That's fun. Wow.
I see what you did there.
That was an accident, I swear.
This is going to be the problem with NIL, fellas.
Yep.
I think we talked about this or touched on it at an earlier point.
Yeah.
Because this is where the sustainability of it becomes a problem. Because if these people are writing checks to get these players, and A, the players don't produce, or B, the coaches had a talent evaluation problem, you're going to have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I mean, it's not just going to be Indiana basketball. I got news. I mean, there's going to be a lot of college football situations, a lot of college basketball situations, that just how many donors are going to keep writing these checks to get players if you're not getting the right players.
And another thing, and I'm not saying this happened with Indiana because I don't think it did, but like a fan base like Indiana, there might be someone who writes a check that says, all right, yeah, this check is going specifically to this guy. I want you to recruit this guy. And like, fans are dummies. We're dummies, right? Like, coach obviously coached at the highest level, but like, we're dummies. We get things wrong all the time. You don't want me recruiting. That's a bad idea.
All right. I mean, it's Indiana's got a lot to figure out, a lot, and I think it starts with Coach Woodson. Like,
what's their record, Josh?
They are currently. Let me pull it up real quick.
Is it 5-2?
They are 5-2.
Yeah.
The good news for them, their schedule has been Cupcake City outside of Battle for Atlantis. It doesn't get any harder, really. I mean, Sam Houston State, Miami, Ohio, Minnesota. They do play at Nebraska, which Nebraska has killed the Indiana teams at home the last couple of years. Chattanooga, Winthrop, Rutgers, Penn State. I mean,
some Goodman majors there, by the way. Some really good ones.
It'll start getting harder, but there are games that they should win, so it'll inflate that record. But I think that's even a worse thing. I think the best thing for them is if they would have had it where they came home this week and played somebody else really tough to see if they kind of course correct.
Yeah, but I would counter you by saying maybe not if they lost by 15 at home. It might make it worse. Maybe they can right the ship. Maybe they can right the ship. Maybe they can come together here. I'm just giving you the coaching side of it here. That might be a dangerous proposition.
I completely agree. But what I'm worried about on the other side of it is that let's say they do win the next 5 and now they're 10-2. The feelings are good, right? Like you're winning, you're 10-2. But if you don't fix the underlying problems when you start playing harder teams again, like when you go on the road to Nebraska, and you haven't fixed anything from Battle for Atlantis, you're going to get blown out by 30 to Nebraska.
Well, you got to
And-
try and fix those while you're winning playing those games. That's my point.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, really fun tournaments. There's so many. We're not going to hit all of them because we got to move on. We'll go around the horn. Trevor, I'll let you start. We had the players era tournament, whatever that was called. We had all these other ones. Name a team or two or a tournament you want to talk about real quick, and we'll just kind of go around the horn like that.
Yeah, the Players Era tournament being on TNT completely took this out for me because, like, YouTube TV, I don't have my second TV in my living room anymore. Shout out to the Christmas tree and my wife. But so TNT flipping back and forth between the multi-box, it was just hard to keep up with. So I watched them back a couple times. So I'll leave that for someone else. Coach, I apologize what I'm about to do. Arizona State is an incredible team, and I had them top 25 now 2 weeks in a row. So I feel like, again, a little bit of early on this team a little early. I think they learned a lot about themselves, albeit that Duke return was an emotional scrimmage. I understand that that's what that was. But basically from that point on, they've been incredible. They almost beat Gonzaga. They obviously have had a great run here, and they won. I guess let me get the name of these tournaments right here. They won the Acrisure Classic, not the Acrisure Invitational. And they defeated St. Mary's 68-64. It's an incredible stretch here for Hurley, and I think this team is really, really good. I know that they're very young and inexperienced. Obviously, Quinitz is one of the best freshmen in the country. Definitely one of the best shot blockers in the country. He's top 5 in that right now. I believe he's second. And then just really just the way they've played, and I think they've kind of figured out who they are, and they figured out how to play within themselves. I was really impressed with Arizona State this week. Coach, I'm sorry. I hate to do that to you.
No. And look, Santa Clara, Grand Canyon, New Mexico, St. Mary's. These are good wins. I mean, you know, and so that's why I shouted them out at the beginning of the show, and I'm glad that you
with
did
my
as
final
well.
with my final seconds here. I'll say this: these tournaments, I know we brought this up earlier. I'm not necessarily talking about a specific one anymore. Arizona State was kind of the one to answer your question, Josh. To tell you, just like I love all these tournaments. I know we brought that up at the beginning. We went through that. The really underrated one that maybe somebody gets to, maybe somebody doesn't, was the Rady Children's Invitational in San Diego. Of course, NC State went 0-2 in there. Ole Miss. It was a really quality tournament. Purdue, Ole Miss, NC State, and I'm forgetting the last one right now off the top of my head.
BYU,
Anybody
right?
can help me? BYU. Yes,
Yeah.
This is the ticket, or they put out like a ticket interest list. This is the tournament field for that one next year. This is a 4-team MTE in San Diego on Thanksgiving Day. It's a very low key environment. Whatever. 4,000 seat arena, UC San Diego, Florida, Kansas, Providence, and Wisconsin.
Wow.
That's
good.
2025 Thanksgiving Day next year. So look forward to that one and book your.
They got Kansas to go to that.
They got
Yeah,
Kansas,
that's
Florida,
impressive.
Providence, and Wisconsin. That's an incredible. Those teams right now. Look at those teams this year. Other than maybe Providence, that's
Florida.
We don't Florida.
Yeah,
Hey,
Florida's good, yeah.
all great
Hey,
coaches.
real quick on Florida, they win the ESPN Events Invitational, destroy
Convincingly.
a decent Wichita State 88-51 in the final. I mean, Coach, you and I a couple weeks ago came on and talked about the Todd Golden, kind of alluded to whatever. The fact that they've rallied around that and they're just blowing teams out. Like, again, the SEC loaded. Florida, really good. Elite backcourt, very tough. DeRosa, how about your Butler Bulldogs? They win the where was it? The Arizona Tip-Off, the Cactus Division. They beat a really solid Mississippi State team by 10. And if we're talking about realistic, like, they're a bad performance from Austin P or against Austin P from being 7-0. I mean, so as a Butler guy, like, you can't be too upset with the start, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, no. Last year, I want to say you guaranteed they'd be a tournament team, and then I think they lost like 6 straight games after that.
Yeah,
don't do that this year. So don't do that this year.
There's a shout out right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but they looked really good. I think this one thing with this team I definitely got wrong coming into the season, I think, is they're an excellent shooting team. Jamil Telford shot 32% from 3 last year. He's shooting like 46% this year. Jamil Telford, by the way, I don't know why he didn't get more NBA buzz than he did. He's a pro. He's been awesome. Patrick McCaffrey shot 31% for his career at Iowa. He's like 48%. Colby King shooting 50% from 3. Pierre Brooks shooting here 50%. This team is an excellent shooting team, and that's how they won these games. That's a good Mississippi State team. Josh Hubbard is a dog, and Butler almost wire-to-wired them. So that was impressive there. And another team I want to shout out because now I have the floor, Oregon. Quack.
There you go.
Quack.
Well, I knew this was coming.
Yep.
Yeah,
I knew
I
it.
said this was the best team in the Big Ten, and right now they look it.
You called
They
me out on it
absolutely
and
look
pulled the
it.
tweet back up 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. So,
beating out-
it's only the things I get right. I never pull back the things I'm wrong about. Only the ones where I can take credit, so I make myself feel smarter than I really am. Oregon is good. The guards are good. Keyshawn Barthelemy was excellent. Nate Biddle looks really good. They were underdogs in 2 of these 3 games at least. Underdogs to Alabama by like 7 points. They were underdogs in their first game. I don't remember. I think it was A&M by like 4 or 5 points. And they were leading for almost these entire games. This team is really, really good. Oregon's going to be a problem down the line. And I think they're very live to win the Big Ten. As of right now, they're still my pick to win the Big Ten. I think they're the best team in that league.
8-0 wins over A&M, San Diego State, Alabama, back to back. Alabama, real quick. I mean, we talked about it a couple shows ago about this brutal stretch. Since then, they beat Illinois, they beat Houston, they beat Rutgers, they lose to Oregon. They've got North Carolina, Creighton next before it, quote unquote, lightens up a little bit before SEC play. Alabama's just going to be who they are. Like, you can't fault them during the stretch. We've talked about that. Incredible offense, still trying to figure out defensively, the 49th. But I want to talk about real quick in the final few moments of this, Houston. Played a very tough schedule so far. Auburn, Alabama, even consider Notre Dame and neutral floor could be tricky. They lose San Diego State yesterday, actually, in overtime, 73-70. Trevor, I want to come back to you just real quick because we talked about this. Them losing Jamal Sheed may have the biggest impact as far as a program losing one player than anybody in the country.
Yeah, you see what I'm doing, YouTube audience? That's a pat on the back because that might be my best take of the year. That might be my best take of the year because at the end of the day, this is a Houston team that, look, Coach Sampson said it himself last night in the press conference. He said this team doesn't have a one, doesn't have somebody that's going to take over a game and dominate them because at the end of the day, they're not some prolific offense and they never really have under Sampson. Maybe y'all disagree with that, but just they're a defensive team. We all know that, but they've had really good talented players and they played within themselves as a team. It's been a really great opportunity to see how that's they've grown as a program. But my problem is Cryer is an incredible player, and yes, to your kind of bringing up the point there about Shed, is that might be the single biggest loss of any team in the country because that was just an alpha on both sides of the ball, and I think that's really hurt them in some of these games. I don't want to be long-winded because I know we've got a little bit of time left, but yes, thank you for regurgitating my take.
You definitely talked about that early, and my biggest surprise with the Houston situation is kind of listening to Coach Sampson and looking at if you look at the last, I think 4 or 6 minutes of their 3 tough games is where they've struggled down the stretch. They've just struggled. They're shooting.
I don't trust anything you have to say about it because you've coached him how many times?
Yeah, so they are not getting shots. They're turning the ball over, and they're not shooting well. I mean, that to me goes back to the Shed situation, probably. I mean, but that's really alarming. Again, another fun one to watch, though. I have tremendous confidence in Coach Sampson.
Do you want to hear a crazy stat about you talking about not shooting well? And it really goes back to the final kind of 4, 5, 6 minute segments of these games. When they get into the lane, they're not finishing, or they're settling for turnaround twos, or however you want to look at that. They're shooting 42.5% from 3. That's 6th best in the country right now. Crazy. But inside the arc, 45.6% for 299th in the country. Meaning they're just not making stuff inside, and a lot of it be around the rim, taking challenge shots, the turnaround kind of mid-post turnarounds we've talked about. They're not converting at a high clip at all from inside the three-point line, and those are ultimately those little bunnies that they miss accumulate over the course of a 40-minute game, and it's costing them at the end. So to be able, it's just weird to think Houston's shooting such a high percentage from 3, but missing inside from basically 10 feet and inside. It's really weird how that.
You almost have to think that's going to flip, right? Like,
yeah, that's exactly what that's a good point. You think of Houston as a team who dominates the paint, right? They dominate the inside, dominate the paint, kind of 12 feet and inside, and it's flipped right now. And I think that's a lot to do with their struggles right now. I think that kind of wraps up all the MTEs, holiday tournaments. I mean, there was others, but there's really
shout out to Drake. It's a shout out for Labor Day, but shout out to Drake. They won the Charleston Classic in a field that nobody thought they were going to win.
Three very good wins in 3 days. And then also shout out Vanderbilt because they were predicted 16th, and Byington's got a solid team. Again, the SEC, man, 16 teams deep, and it's going to be a grind this year. But we've talked a lot about high energy today. We've talked a lot about kind of keeping your energy levels up.
That's really good. So
we are proud to announce that we are now sponsored by W Energy. For those who may have heard of it, you kind of know what W is, but for those who haven't, W is a clean energy drink that is made to give you focus with no crash, jitters, or angst like other energy drinks. They have no maltodextrin fillers and don't use artificial dyes. W contains vitamins, amino acids, a nootropic, and 150 milligram caffeine. Their product is made in the USA in an FDA inspected facility that strictly adheres to GMP manufacturing guidelines. And we are proud to have W Energy on board with us this year. As you can see, if you're following along with us live on the YouTube or Twitter, if you go buy W products at their website, www.w.gg, you can go look at all they do have the energy drinks. They have the shakers for like the shakes and all that. You guys know I'm talking about, the tumblers, whatever they're called. And then they have all the energy blends. They have different brands. And as you can see on the picture right here, the Galaxy Grenade. Bottom line, really good stuff, healthy. Does have some caffeine to give you the boost without all the bad stuff that goes into it. If you go buy their products, use the promo code ECB10 at checkout to get your 10% off. We are happy to have W Energy on board with us this year for everything college basketball. I've got my supply coming in. I will do kind of a taste test reaction coming in when it arrives. Really excited to have W Energy. Again, go to their website, www.w.gg. Shop around. Whenever you find something that you like, use the promo code ECB10 at checkout for 10% off. We're very happy to have them on board this year for everything college basketball. And you guys know I love my energy drinks. I love my shakes. I love all that. So really happy to have W on board with us this year. I think what we do now is, with the remaining time we have left in today's show, is look ahead. Because this week, Feast Week was a lot to digest. This week we have the ACC SEC Challenge, especially in this early week show we love talking about, spread across Tuesday and Wednesday night. This is the second year of the ACC SEC Challenge, so a lot of intriguing matchups coming up. And honestly, we've talked so much about the SEC being the best conference college basketball. I think, Trevor, this is a good chance for the ACC to kind of stake some claim to that as well. Maybe not the best, but to show that they're middle of the pack. The teams outside Duke, Carolina, and a few others are able to compete at a high level. I love these because, Coach, you've talked about it. These are all home and homes. True road environments, true home environments, a lot of fun spread across 48 hours. So wherever you guys want to start in this challenge, we have some big ones. Auburn's playing at Duke. You got North Carolina, Alabama. Kentucky's on the road to Clemson in their first true road environment. A lot of really high quality games this upcoming week. So wherever you guys want to start, we'll dive into it.
I think I mean, there's a lot to talk about, right? But Ole Miss and Louisville.
That's a good one. Let's go. Let's go with it.
That's a fun game. Two teams. We're trying to figure out who is what. Louisville's on the rise, right? With how they played in the tournament and got the excitement going, and now they got a chance to get a really quality home win against a good team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We talked about, and I hope Kason Pryor is healthy. It didn't look great the other night, but they run a lot through him. The dude's almost 7 foot, whatever his height is. Let me look that up real quick.
Yeah, he's a big
6'10".
dude.
Might as well say 7 foot. But he plays
really
like
move.
He plays like a wing, right? And a lot of times he does spend time out on the wing. Yeah, like he spends a lot of time out on the wing. He tries to take advantage of getting downhill to the rim. He can shoot a little bit. So they need him. But we talked about with Louisville, I'm very impressed with what they do defensively, the pressure they put on the ball. And then a guy like Chucky Hepburn, we didn't even talk about him. Peyton left a comment earlier when we were talking about Louisville. Chucky Hepburn had like 7 steals per game out in the battle for Atlantis. The defensive pressure he puts on their guards is absolutely insane, and he's making shots. So when you look at this Louisville game, I would imagine the KFC Yum Center is packed. I imagine it's rocking for a big-time home environment. And so, DeRosa, I'll come to you first on this. When you look at Louisville playing at home against Ole Miss with Kason Pryor, without him, I would like to think Louisville has the advantage by a couple points in this game.
I would too, especially considering home court. It's another really big game for Louisville. You're coming off, you have some momentum. Ole Miss does too. They played pretty well against Purdue, and then they beat BYU in the first round of that tournament, right, Trevor?
Yeah.
So I think they have some momentum coming into this game, but I will lean Louisville. I think Louisville's guards. Louisville has the just a really talented roster. Definitely want Cason Pryor back. His status definitely determines how confident you are in this pick, but I'm going to lean Louisville in this spot. I think they have enough to get the job done here.
I'm saying Louisville with Pryor, Mississippi without him.
Oh, okay. I think that's fair. I'll throw a stat at you guys. So Mississippi on the offensive end is number one and take care of the basketball. They have a turnover percentage of 11.5, so they take care and value the basketball. Louisville is fifth in the country at forcing turnovers. 24.9% of their defensive stands end in a turnover. So does Ole Miss go on the road and take care of the basketball? If they do, they probably win. If Louisville can force turnovers and you know the pace they want to play at, they're up and down, they're shooting threes. If they can force, let's say, 12 or more turnovers, and that's maybe still a little too low, maybe you bump it up to 15. But basically, if they can get after Ole Miss, force them into turnovers, especially live ball turnovers, I love Louisville in this game. And it comes down to three-point shooting. They can't do like they did against Tennessee and go 4 of 39 or whatever it was. They're going to have to hit 8, 9, 10, 11 of them, right, and probably shoot around 33, 34%. But I love the pace that Louisville can play. I love what their guards are showing. And even without Cason Pryor, I think they have enough to beat Ole Miss by 4 or 5 points at home.
KenPom has it by 4. Louisville by 4. So that's right on money there. This is so hard for me. These are two teams that I love. Ole Miss, I've had my top 25 every week since the beginning of the year. I've stayed high on them. They've proved it. They've only lost, their only loss this year is by 2 points to Purdue, who we all think is really good. I'm going to lean Louisville because it's at the Yum Center.
Yeah. DeRosa, did you give a prediction on that?
Yeah, I echoed the same sentiments as Trevor.
Okay. Well, let's move on to some of the big ones here, like the marquee ones, and that would be at Cameron Indoor Stadium on Wednesday night, Duke, Auburn. Now, we've talked a lot about Auburn. Duke did go play Arizona. They did beat up Arizona, but they also lost to Kansas. They lose in similar fashion at the end, kind of like they lost to Kentucky. The freshmen made turnovers. Flag went for that spin move again, turned the ball over, and Con Knippel turned the ball over as well.
How about those 2 ridiculous dunks by Flag?
Oh, my God. He posted, whoever it was for Kansas, he just posted.
Made that pass. That kid can elevate. Sorry, go ahead. It was amazing.
No. I think those are good points too. Flag, and we talked about after Kentucky. You got to think Flag's going to figure this out. Maybe put the spin move up late in games on the ISOs. Maybe go to something else. But you got to think he's going to figure it out. They've played a brutal schedule so far. It doesn't get any easier with the presumed number 1 team of the country coming into your home building. But we've talked about this for decades. Cameron Indoor, especially on a big game night, is such an incredible home court advantage. Can Auburn take what they've been doing at Houston, out in Maui, and take it into a big-time road environment and continue to run that modern flex, continue to hit their shots, keep their head? Because this is one of those environments at Cameron Indoor that the crowd's right on top of you. They're going to try to get in your head. And if Chad Baker-Mazara, let's say he missed a couple shots and the crowd's getting on him, he turns the ball over, I'm worried he may lose his mind and do something stupid out of the ordinary. I think this is a good opportunity for Duke to prove that, yeah, we're young and, yeah, we've lost a couple of games close, but we can win these big-time ball games. I kind of like Duke in this game, even though we think Auburn's the best team in the country. What say you guys?
I got Duke.
I cannot believe I'm picking against a Duke team at Cameron Indoor because I've been there and I've experienced that place. But Auburn's that good. And Con, I think I just have to give him a shout out here because he just has elevated this team. I don't think he was a top recruit like a lot of those other guys were, but there's 2 of their top 4 recruits in this class are sitting on the bench and haven't played a minute. And Con has just been out there and he's been dominant. He's been their second best player without a doubt. And he's elevated them, but I think the inexperience will continue, even at home, will continue to be a problem, especially in a game against a team like Auburn, who is the quite literal opposite in terms of experience, and as we talked about for 40 minutes earlier. So I'm going to go with Auburn. It's going to be close, and I believe, if I'm correct, I think KenPom has Auburn winning by 1, if I'm correct. I'll pull it up.
They have by 2.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. They have Duke winning by 2. They have
he
Duke
takes this early in the season. He takes consideration to home court. I will say that, and so maybe that's but I'll go with Auburn.
DeRosa, how about this for a matchup? We've spent minutes and all this talking about the National Player of the Year right now is Janai Broom. But this is a different matchup he'll probably have to go against if Kamen Malawach guards him with the length and athleticism.
Yeah.
You would think he can play out high to take the three-point shot away. Now, Broom could dominate him physically in the paint, but if Malawach stays out of foul trouble, that is a tough matchup for Janai Broom.
Yeah, Malawach, they're going to have different guys that can throw looks on him, like Brown, Cooper Flagg, but I am going to take Auburn. I just think the veteran experience. This is a spot this team has been in before, and it could be some. I mean, dude, players have all played at very high levels. Like Cooper Flagg was, he was the guy in AAU, the guy at high school. So like they've been there, but I just think Auburn's used to it. And I think they're the best team in the country at this point. And I don't really want to pick against the best team in the country, though I also don't want to pick against Duke and Cameron. So it's going to be a really fun game. This is not a high confidence pick, but give me the Tigers.
What if I told you Duke had the number one defense right now, which surprises the hell out of me? They're number one.
I can understand it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing is if it comes late in the game, which we expect this to be close, does Duke make the same mistake of trying to put the ball in Flagg's hand, go ISO? Do you think that's just kind of what they're going to do all year?
Well, no, they didn't. They didn't against Kansas, and it still was a freshman making him. Wasn't necessarily a mistake. They got Con open, but like, they have to figure out. Like, I'm not saying Sion James is the one taking that shot at the end of the games. It's just not. But they
the play late where he spun and turned it over. The kid shouldn't have cut. He'd have stayed in the corner. The spacing would have been better, and he wouldn't have been caught in that situation. I think they're just as upset as. So I don't know why he cut. He brought the defender right to him.
That's a good point. I trust Duke in this spot, and I think Auburn's good enough that they could absolutely go win this game and maybe win it convincingly. But Cameron Indoors, it's a brutal place to go get a win.
This is the best one of the tournament, correct? Of the challenge.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. I would say so. Yeah.
How about Alabama, North Carolina?
Well, let's get to it. Yeah,
the Carolinas have all the home games, by the way. Shout out to the scheduling for this. Like North Carolina, Texas is coming to NC State, and obviously we just talked about Duke. Wake Forest is the one obviously going on the road there against Texas A&M. But shout out to
these two teams played. I think it was last year, right? In this challenge, and we came on this show and said it'll be the first one to 100 wins, and
that was true.
And it was, yeah. And I think it's the same thing. Both these teams up and down the floor. They're going to shoot a lot. They're going to be incredible guard play on the floor. So when you break it down, does it just come down to North Carolina's at home? And that's the big deal because both teams coming off losses. Carolina 2 in a row. Alabama, we talked about losing to Oregon, going into a true road environment. Carolina, you know, with that pace, it's hard not to turn the ball over. They're fifth and take care of the ball. They only turn it over 12.7% of the time. So they're playing fast. They're taking care of it. Defensively, though, they're 65th. So they got to figure out a way to not give up 90-plus points if that's possible to Alabama. If they can lock in and keep Alabama, let's say, under 85, I think they win this game.
Yeah, I mean, they're 8th and 11th in scoring in the country, these two teams?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. So assists, Carolina is 117th in the country in assists, yet 18th in the country in turnovers at 9.3.
It's because, yeah.
I mean, very intriguing. They don't turn it over, and yet it's not like they are. They got some guys, I guess, playing one-on-one, right? I mean, because they don't have a huge high assist rate.
I'll give you a matchup. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. If Carolina wins this game, Jalen Withers has a big game. Because he's probably going to be matched up with Grant Nelson. And we've seen Grant get eaten up on defense. Like, we've seen he's a little slow-footed on rotations. If a guy, especially his opposite, can step out and shoot, he's a little slow getting out there, especially with Carolina driving the ball downhill, whether it be Davis or Cadeau or whoever, kickouts to Withers. I think Jalen Withers could be the X factor for Carolina if they were to win this game. Maybe has like 22 and 9 or something like that, hits 4 or 5 threes. I think DeRosa, if Carolina wins, Jalen Withers is a big reason why.
And then on the other side of the ball for Alabama, if they win this game, we've talked about UNC's issues in the front court in particular. Cliff Emery has not yet gotten going this year. This is the spot for him. If he can step up in this spot, they can win this game. This is a game I think he has to prove there was a reason he was, I guess, the most highly coveted transfer in the country. If Alabama's going to win, he's got to lock in here.
Maybe
all right, prediction.
But
Prediction time. I'll go Carolina at home. They don't turn the ball over. They play a fast pace, so Alabama's not going to scare them in that. It's going to be a high scoring game, and I think at home they can make enough plays to win the game. I go Carolina in a high, 96-91, something like that.
I'm going to take Alabama.
yeah,
I could obviously see Carolina winning. If I have to make a prediction, I'm going to take Alabama.
I think Alabama wipes them off the floor.
Wow.
I think North Carolina's in a skid right now. I think they're in I haven't seen enough from Davis this year making adjustments that I'm comfortable making that he's just going to magically fix this front court against Alabama being the next game. This is just really remember the Indiana conversation about the timing of who you play next? This is really unfortunate timing. I understand this is in the Dean Smith Center, but I mean, I was actually going to bring up the Grant Nelson spot as okay, he's probably going to destroy this team because he can move in the front court, and a lot of those bigs for Carolina, maybe a little bit more traditional. And so I think that spot will be Grant Nelson against Tyson. I think that'll be kind of the one to watch there, but I think Alabama wins by more than 10. I just do. I think this is just too hot of an Alabama team. I think they're too good. They play this. Look, if we're saying this is the two styles going against each other, Alabama plays fast better. So that's just that has to just be. And to Coach's point about the assist versus the scoring, those. I'm trying to figure out the best way to articulate this, but those inside passes they're not scoring those, and so that's just going to really affect that number. And so Alabama, I think, can run them up and down, and I think they're not afraid. They played a hard schedule. I think that really benefits Alabama. I'm going to go with Alabama by more than 10.
They need good Mark Sears. I know he's had a game or two where he's had 22, 24, but it's taken him 20 shots to get there. They need good Mark Sears in this game or they don't win.
Neither of us can guard him. So that's another reason. I think neither those are all offensive guards. And so I think he's going to have a game. So
I was fairly 50-50 on this game, slightly leaning towards Alabama. Trevor convinced me, Alabama.
Fine. Look, I think Alabama obviously can win this game. I think Carolina can put it together for one game and slow Alabama down. I think Alabama has some issues that we've not touched on a whole lot. Maybe we will later on after more of a sample size, but I think they've got some issues themselves that they got to figure out. And then the other, I guess, the third biggest one of this challenge, I would say, is Kentucky at Clemson. Clemson 7-1. They're 25th in KenPom. Kentucky is undefeated. The last two games this last week, Kentucky, none concern me because they've still won big at the end. But Western Kentucky played them very physical, got downhill, made some shots. And then Georgia State did the same thing. Just bully balled them inside until Kentucky figured it out. But the thing with the Cats, when it gets close, all of a sudden in a minute and a half stretch, they can go on a 19-2 run, which is what they did in both those games. They've got two very big games coming up this week. At Clemson, at Gonzaga. We might as well say at Gonzaga. It's in Seattle. Might as well say a true road game.
Yeah.
I think they split them, and I can't believe – I think Clemson they lose because Clemson, the experience – physical, they're shooting the three ball incredibly well right now, 39.8%. Kentucky's three-point defense has been very good this year. But Kentucky, the last two games, their three ball's not going in right now at the rate it was at the beginning of the year, which I think will course correct itself. They're too good of a shooters not to. I think this is a tough spot with two very big games, true road environment. I think it's close. I think Kentucky will be there at the end. But I actually like Clemson in this game. Victor Locken, Chase Hunter, Ian Schifflin. I think Clemson will make a play or two. Maybe the Cats go on a 3-minute scoring drought, and that's enough to win it. Close game. I think Clemson wins at home.
I got Kentucky.
I hope you're right.
I know you're right.
I hope you're right.
Clemson's been consistent. They really have. They've been nothing but consistent this year. That's just been the Brad Brownell thing: 33 in offense, 25 in defense. They've just been consistent. The problem is, I'm not sure the offense. I think that number's slightly inflated a little bit, and I think Kentucky just has more dudes that can get it done, and I think that'll be the difference. I'm not saying this is gonna be some big blowout, but I think Kentucky's offense is just better than Clemson's defense, and I think that matters.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Picking another road team. That goes over very well in college basketball. I'm not gonna lie. I was hoping nobody would pick Clemson. Then I would just be like, I'll pick Clemson just to be contrarian. But Josh picked them. I watched the Boise State game when Clemson played Boise, and Boise State's size just kind of bothered them. Boise State was able to run a lot of their actions, and I don't know. I think Kentucky has that, and also Chase Hunter had to go for 30 in that game, and they still ended up losing by 13. I think unless you get a huge game out of Chase Hunter, I think Kentucky just, as Trevor mentioned, is too many dudes.
Listen, I hope you guys are right, and I can't believe I picked against Kentucky, but it's a tough spot. The crowd should be very lively. It's a 9 p.m. tip, too, so I hate those late games. And then you got to go Saturday to play Gonzaga. So I don't know. Obviously, I hope you guys are right on that. But I think Clemson gets this one. Kentucky, we'll talk about that Thursday. I think they go beat Gonzaga, though. All right, let's start wrapping this thing up. Let's do just real quick. We've talked about a bunch of teams. We'll throw some names out there real quick. From the first month of college basketball, from what your first opinion was to now, whose stock has risen in college basketball? For me, I've already mentioned it. Memphis, Louisville, West Virginia, Oklahoma. Those are just the 4 that come off the top of my head. For you guys, whose stock has risen in the first month of college basketball?
Arizona State for me.
Yep.
And I got, I think you mentioned 2 of them, Memphis and Oklahoma. Hard to deny them.
Yeah. Oklahoma, West Virginia, and I'm going to go off the board here, Utah State.
Yeah, good one.
Nice.
Losing their coach, losing their best player. That's a good one. I like it.
Do you want just riser, did you say, or a riser and faller?
We'll get to follower here in just a second.
Okay.
Just do your risers. Yeah.
Just relative to top 25 on October 27th, I would have to just for spots alone, I would have to say Kentucky. I had them 19th, and now this week, just shocker, they're going to be in the top 7 probably. And then Auburn, I had 13. I'd have to say that's a riser for just being straight up. Oregon, I had way outside the top 25. They're now probably a top 15 team. And then I'll give you one more that I think is really fun and interesting that we didn't really talk about. And that's Marquette. That's a team I've been really, really impressed with. I know they haven't played.
Good call.
They have not played the hardest schedule by any stretch of the imagination. I understand that. But I think that they're winning games in the right way, the way they like to play. And what does that do in Big East play? That helps you. That helps you in Big East play when you're confident in the way you play entering that play.
I'll give you 2 more. I'll give you 2 more Big Ten teams. Wisconsin's 8-0. They've surprised a lot of us. I don't think any of us had that. And then Penn State. I mean, they lost to Clemson, but I think we had them predicted last.
Tied game with 2 minutes to go. I watched the whole game, obviously.
Watched the end. It was really good.
They've had multiple 100-point scoring performances. I think they've really surprised some people, myself included. They're 38th in KenPom, so that tells you a lot right there. And then let's do followers real quick. People or teams that are just kind of disappointed. I mean, I'll throw Connecticut. I don't see how you don't say Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Connecticut's got to be on there, in my opinion. And then, I mean, I take no joy in this. If you go back to my bold prediction.
I know.
But boy, did I tell you guys about Arkansas, or did I tell you about Arkansas? Because they are,
I had them as well.
It's awful, guys. It's awful. The same offense, the outdated offense running, the substitution patterns. When they go down big, even their fan base now is talking about like, oh man, these Kentucky people were right. Like they weren't being assholes. They were just telling us that we're right. It's the same thing that plagued them the last 5 or 6 years at Kentucky. Outdated offense, terrible substitution patterns. It looks like they've never scouted these teams that they've played before. Illinois ran them off the floor. Hit 14 or 15 threes. They still can't defend ball screen offense. They still can't defend the three-point shot. Arkansas, I'm telling you, they're going to be a bubble team this year. They'll probably still make tournament, but in that SEC play, 10 or more losses is what I said. I think the wheels have came off. I don't think Arkansas is very good. Those are my 2.
I'm going to just put Arizona in there just because of the struggles they
That's
had.
a good one. There you go. Yep.
Yeah. I'll throw Creighton in there. They've been
that's a good one. There you go.
Concerning.
That's a good one.
If I can't have Arkansas, because
you can.
I like literally on the 11th, I dropped them out of the top 25. I mean, it was like that fast. I was like, I'm just not in, and I just haven't been in it since. So I'm with you on that, holding your hand there. Indiana, I told you guys for the season, those first 2 pods.
Yes,
I mean, I was probably the highest of anybody on this podcast about Indiana, and here we are. And then I'll give you one more that I think they can right the ship this week. But Texas, I think that they've been good. I wonder if there's another level. Yeah, I wonder if there's another level for this team, even though the freshman Johnson's been really good.
I didn't expect Texas very highly. Another team I want to throw in there because I can. Providence. That team is bad. They're just bad. They're like we thought they'd be okay. They're bad.
I had Texas 21st to start the season, so if we're going off the way the fresh question was framed, I believe that's the reason I would go with Texas.
And honestly, I'll throw Texas A&M in there as well. But again, we had them ranked top 13 or 14, and they I don't know, man. Same stuff every year with Texas A&M. They'll turn it on in conference play. They'll make the NCAA tournament as like a 5 or 6, and then they'll lose in the first round. It's just they've got such a talented team, and they're not performing to that. It's crazy. We've already talked about all the other stuff I want to talk about. Let's do shout-outs real quick, and I'll just reel mine off real quick. Penny Hardaway, I've already talked about. All the drama surrounding this team and everything goes into it, firing the coaching staff, bringing in new guys, needing a big year in year 7, and they've been off to a very good start. It's not their fault they played the best team in the country. They played them close for a little bit until they kind of Auburn got away from them. But that was a really good week in Maui. I'm very impressed with what I see Memphis through the first month, and I think they're going to be good throughout the year. And I talked about Florida, guys. You know how much of a distraction that can be with your head coach and all that surrounding Todd Golden still. And they're blowing teams out the water. They're absolutely destroying teams. Shout out to Florida and just the moxie it takes to rally around the negative light and to just mollywop teams. So those are my 2.
My shout out will be to Feast Week.
Yeah, baby.
I'll give the credit here to the at Field of 68 for this stat. 32 games in Feast Week went to overtime.
I was gonna,
and 11 of them were buzzer beaters.
Good call. Good call.
So there's my shout out. What a week!
Love it. DeRosa.
Yeah, you guys went mainstream. I'm going to go really under the radar here for a shout out. I'm shouting out a player. Looking at the West Coast. Owen Kuntz is the name I'm going to shout out. Cal Poly goes at Stanford and wins. He had 30 points on 12 of 16 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3, 7 boards. He's been playing really well, really high level. He had 16 against St. Mary's, 7 of 11 shooting, 17 against Grambling, 8 boards, 7 of 10 shooting. That's a good Grambling team. They're probably going to win the SWAC. Owen Kuntz been playing at a high level. Nobody's been talking about him. Now someone has, and it's me.
They scored 63. They scored 63 in the second half at Stanford.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Stanford
Cal Poly's a team to watch.
Yeah.
Cal Poly's a team to watch in the Big West. We got to pay attention now.
Anything DeRosa says about the SWAC, I put my hands up and say you're right. So I like to go off the board as well, as you guys know, and that is really off the board. I like this. So I've got a couple. I know I bring too many to the table, but really quick. Shout out to Sunbelt Syndicate. I've shouted him out before on the podcast. He's been on the show before. We talked about the Sunbelt. I'll be going to a game with him on Wednesday, his first media credential game of his career. So super excited to have him out here to watch Campbell and Coastal Carolina in their first year under Coach Gray, who I think's actually been kind of underrated. That'll be a really fun game to watch. South Carolina women, UCLA took them down. Obviously, that game was on the road, truly at UCLA. That's a tough game. Shout out to South Carolina for being willing to schedule that game and put yourself out there to potentially be knocked off for the first time in a decade.
It was like
whatever
40.
It is.
What with their non-conference record? It got
it
like 48 or something like that. Yeah, it was
their record in general. They didn't lose last year, right? So I mean, that's just And then lastly, my real one is the Columbia Lions are 8-0. The Columbia Lions are for the first time, I think since 2010, their first best start since 2010. But I think for the first time ever, they're 8-0, including 5 home wins. Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa, one of the best names in college basketball. That didn't make the name team. Didn't make the name team. He's a dog. And they have not won the Ivy regular season since the Vietnam War. Since 1967, 68, they have not won the regular season.
Jim Engels is a friend of mine, so I'm going to double that shout out.
Engels is awesome. They've been incredible. They're 8-0. They had a really good win. They beat Villanova. Whether that's a good win or not is up to you to decide. But they did win. They played an incredible schedule so far, 8-0, and they have a chance to make the NCAA tournament for the first time since that same year, 67, 68. So shout out to the Columbia Lions. And one more time, Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa.
I love it. And then lastly, bank on it just real quick. Early part of the week, we'll go back for me, the SEC ACC Challenge. I know I picked 2 ACC schools and Duke and Carolina to beat SEC powerhouses at this point. And 3, I picked Clemson to beat Kentucky. But that's withstanding. I think SEC dominates 8-4. I think there's 12 games in this challenge. SEC dominates because there's some bad matchups. Vanderbilt's playing Virginia Tech, who's not great. SEC 8-4 dominates the ACC in this challenge. Bank on it.
Alabama, Mark Sears, 25+, 10-point win for Bama.
I love it. Love it. DeRosa?
Wake's a team I'm blind fading. They play Texas A&M at Open. Wake, I don't trust this Wake team. They don't yet have a point guard until they prove to me that they have a point guard and that their metrics are like on the same level as them. I don't think Wake's very good. So Texas A&M by TKO. Bank on it.
Oh, brother, I don't like this at all. What I'm about to say. Auburn wins by 15 at Duke. Bank on it.
Oh man, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. So,
To your bank on it, by the way, Josh, 7-7 last year, men and women, both in this challenge. 7-7 was the final record between these two teams or these two conferences in the challenge. So that is a real bank on it, because 7-7 to now go and flip the challenge and be that far ahead. That's a good one. 7-7.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the SEC is loaded, and some of those bottom, like we talked about, Vanderbilt, Virginia Tech. I think Vandy is going to destroy Virginia Tech, I think. So that wraps up. It was a longer show. We went over by about 10 minutes today. I hope you guys appreciate that. We had a lot to catch up. I hope you guys enjoyed Feast Week. I hope you enjoyed Thanksgiving. The next break we'll get here is coming up in less than a month with Christmas. So got a lot of big-time college basketball. College football is starting to come to an end. Regular season ended yesterday, so it's starting to come to an end. Those casuals will be coming over to our site, so we can't wait to have you for conference play and then heading into March Madness. But until then, until Thursday's show, we'll talk about that ACC, SEC challenge and everything else that's happened. For all the guys here, we hope you enjoyed your holiday. Thank you to W as a new sponsor. Go use our promo code ECB10 at checkout. Go get you some good energy stuff over there. But until Thursday in episode 198, we will catch you guys down the road. Peace.
DePaul is 7-0.